They thought they had caught the mastermind behind the SASSA scheme. But as the handcuffs clicked and the news broke, a darker truth lurked beneath the surface, one that would expose an even bigger, hidden empire. It all began inside a crowded ShopRite store in Soweto. 2 women, a stack of SASSA cards, and a simple tip-off to police. What seemed like a small-time scam unraveled into a nationwide betrayal of trust, involving government officials, fake identities, and millions stolen from South Africa's poorest citizens. Now, with whistleblowers stepping forward and arrests piling up, one question haunts the nation. Who really runs the network? 2 computer science students at Stellenbosch University were working on a project that had nothing to do with crime. Their goal was to test vulnerabilities in public and private systems, not to cause harm, but to help improve security. They chose to start with something simple: the South African Social Security Agency, known as SASSA. At first, it was just numbers, but what they found would shake the entire nation. They began by comparing national birth data with SASSA grant applications. February 2005 stood out. The national records showed just over 82,000 births that month, but the number of grant applications tied to that birth month was nearly 75,000. That meant almost 91% of people born in that month had applied for grants, a number that didn't make any sense. Not every person in South Africa is struggling. Not every 18-year-old qualifies for a grant. These students knew something was wrong. The data wasn't adding up. They couldn't ignore it, so they expanded their investigation. They looked at birth years between 2002 and 2006. They also looked at older generations born between 1960 and 2005. The younger group showed a 90% grant application rate. The older group was less than 50%. That gap was too wide. It didn't follow any logical pattern. Something much bigger was happening. Then things got personal. The students found that SASSA had paid out grants using their own identity numbers. Neither of them had ever applied for a grant. They were shocked. This wasn't just data manipulation. It was full-on identity theft, and it had reached their own records. To see how deep the issue went, they surveyed students on campus. Out of 60 students, 58 had active SASSA grants under their names. But here's the kicker. 56 of them said they never applied for any grant. That was no longer an error. That was mass fraud. Something organized was going on, and it had infiltrated SASSA's system on a national level. The students knew they couldn't keep quiet. They went public with their findings. It didn't take long for the story to spread like wildfire. Major news outlets picked it up. Headlines screamed about massive fraud within one of South Africa's most critical financial systems. As the nation watched in disbelief, the pressure started piling on the government. The Minister of Social Development made a public appearance. She promised the entire country that there would be a full investigation. She gave the team 30 days to uncover the truth. For a moment, people felt hope. The news lit up social media. Radio talk shows buzzed. People wanted answers. They wanted heads to roll. Everyone from taxpayers to grant recipients felt betrayed. But then, silence. Weeks passed. No updates, no arrests, no word from the so-called investigation team. It was like someone had pulled the plug on the case. People started asking questions. Was the investigation really happening, or was it being buried? The minister's promise faded from headlines. Anger turned into frustration. Suspicion grew. Whispers about an inside job started to spread. The students had expected some kind of backlash, but they didn't expect a blackout. Their phones stopped ringing. No one from the government called, and yet they knew what they had seen. The numbers didn't lie. Someone was stealing identities. Someone was cashing in on fake grants, and it wasn't just small-time crooks. This was organized, calculated, and protected. At Stellenbosch, the students kept digging. They wanted to know how deep this thing went. If their own IDs had been used, how many others had suffered the same fate? They reached out to peers, lecturers, even journalists. They weren't letting it go. And neither was the public. Even with no word from the authorities, people began to connect the dots. Fake applications, duplicate payouts, stolen identities. Everything pointed to a major breach inside the system, but no one was being held accountable. And the silence from officials only made it worse. This was not a glitch. It was a syndicate, one so bold it used real people's identities to bleed the country dry and left no visible trail. But the trail was there, buried in data, hidden in systems. And 2 university students had uncovered the first clue in a crime worth millions. It was just a normal afternoon at a ShopRite in Soweto. But what happened next would change the course of a national investigation. Two women strolled into the store and headed straight to the ATMs. They weren't shopping. Instead, they were making back-to-back withdrawals using different SASSA cards. At first, the staff thought little of it until they noticed just how many times the women returned to the machine. The shop workers kept watching. Something was off. The women moved in a pattern, always checking around before they slid in another card. More people gathered near the ATM as the cash started to pour out. In total, the women used more than a dozen different cards in a matter of minutes. That's when one of the workers made a call to the police, but they didn't alert the women. They kept calm, pretending everything was normal. They knew that tipping off the suspects could ruin the chance of catching them in the act. All they had to do now was wait. The police didn't take long. Within minutes, officers entered the store quietly. They moved in fast, blocking off the exits without drawing attention. The two women were still at the ATM, completely unaware that the net was closing in. When they were surrounded, they froze. Police searched them on the spot. What they found was shocking. The women had over 40,000 rands in cash, freshly withdrawn. They also had dozens of SASSA cards, each linked to different identities. No clear explanation, no legal documents to match. Right there, police knew this was no random crime. This wasn't just two people stealing. This had signs of something much bigger, organized fraud, calculated and quiet until now, and they were just getting started. As police escorted the women out of the store, something else caught their eye. A man was waiting in a car nearby. He didn't look surprised when the women were arrested. Instead, he sat still, like he knew the game was over. Officers approached and asked for identification. They searched the man and the evidence piled up quickly. He had a stack of bank cards, more SASSA cards, 5 different passports from multiple countries, and over a dozen SIM cards. They also found photos, identity shots that looked like they were for making fake IDs. This wasn't a minor